Welcome to the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, and on Android, Spotify, or the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. We've been telling people to subscribe to Off the Floor. You're finally all listening. Get off of Twitter. Get to the most heat information and conversation. You can find all the latest stuff on host updates, everything decent from Twitter, IG. We put it there anyway. And we separate it into 10 different channels. We got a draft channel, got a transaction channel. We've got all kinds of channels there. So check it out. It's Off the Floor. This is where sports content is going. We're leading you there. Use the link in the description. Subscribe for $2.99 a month. You can cancel at any time. Also, check out Prize Picks. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Put down your $5. Get $50 to play right away. Prize Picks, the official fantasy sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. You can still play, even with all the other sports not going right now. You can play WNBA, you can play MLB, and, of course, get ready for football season. So check it out. It's Prize Picks. Use the code FIVE. Get your $50 to play in Florida and beyond right away. And now, today's episode.
Mercy. Luxurious. Heat Nation. Yeah. Mercy and Lago. Down to Biscayne. Yeah. 5 on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars. Wearing bubble frogs. Down to Biscayne. Kept the floor playing. Got it all band. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust. It's about have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. Well, we put out a bunch of episodes the past few days, so it's one of today's floor plans. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick on 5 Reasons Sports. I got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. And we've got Yossi Gozlan. This is a home and home. We've done this a couple of times. You can follow his great work on the Third Apron. That's a podcast, also a newsletter. Check it out. Again, it's Yossi Gozlan on Twitter. You can find everything there. He is a cap guru. I am not. I have a basic understanding of these things, which may be as much as half the agents in the league. But again, it's a basic understanding. Alex knows a lot more than I do. Yossi knows about as much as anybody. So we're bringing you on here to talk about the Heat situation as we head into free agency, into the moratorium period, ultimately into the end of the league year. And then as decisions have to be made here to stay under various thresholds, whether it's second apron, first apron, repeater tax, all of that kind of stuff. And the Heat have difficult decisions to make. And we're going to start here. And Alex has kind of teed up most of these questions, having some internet issues today. So we're going to work our way through this. But he's teed up a lot of this. And it starts with this Duncan Robinson situation. So you have been, as we were talking about pre-show, one of the guys who has focused on the situation with Duncan and his contract the most, as far as another option that could be presented here. But as we get into where the Heat are with their cap sheet, what do you think could and should happen with Duncan, and how does it affect everything else?
Thanks for having me on the show, Ethan. As far as the Duncan situation, most Heat fans, just people on making their fake trades, they're putting Duncan in trades as if he's this guy that can save another team money. Like when Kevin Durant was still available, he seemed like a logical salary filler to be included. I think also people kind of misunderstand a little bit how that would work. Like, yeah, the team taking in Duncan can save some money, but it's not like it's not like they bring in $20 million and then they just let it magically disappear. There's a partial guarantee, and depending on how the trade works, maybe it's more. They have to increase the guarantee. But now that KD isn't coming and we're getting a lot closer to the start of free agency, I do think we're getting maybe a little closer to the possibility that Duncan Robinson could return for a couple of reasons. So if they're going to make a trade, they don't have to include Duncan Robinson. They also have Terry Rozier's big expiring contract. That could get a lot of the way there. So Duncan now, as I'm looking at my information, his guarantee date is July 8th. So the Heat have roughly like a week and a half from now to figure out what they're going to do with him. I'm sure they're going to, I would guess they're going to take this to the very end, see if just exhaust their trade opportunities before deciding whether to keep him or waive him. But, oh, you know what? I have to actually take a step back because now here's the opportunity that you wanted me to talk about. He's got the early termination option. That doesn't wait until July 8th. He needs to decide on that, like, I guess tomorrow or
June 29th, I believe, Yossi, right?
Yeah.
So is that the date? So we're recording this, just to be clear on this, we're recording this on the 27th. So I guess he has until Sunday to make a decision on that.
So if he picks it up, which he probably will, his contract isn't fully guaranteed. It's only going to be guaranteed for about 10 million, 9.9 to be exact. So one thing that the Heat and Duncan could actually discuss now is restructuring his contract, as in because they're allowed to negotiate with their own players right now. Maybe instead of trying to shop him around in a trade, they can have him decline the termination option, kind of similar as a player option, and then re-sign at a lower amount. Maybe something at whatever his guaranteed portion is. That 10 million, maybe a little bit higher, maybe give him multiple years. I don't know how they want to do it, but I'm sure there are some negotiations going on as far as that option. So if they do that, then he's locked in. He can't be traded until December, most likely. But if not, he picks it up. And if he picks it up, then I'm sure they'll probably look to see if they can trade him before that July 8th date. And if not, maybe they consider cutting him. Maybe they even consider stretching him to cut that 9.9 million divided by 3 over the next 3 years.
Okay. Now, and I'm going to go to Alex on this too. And again, we're working through some technical difficulties, but I think we have, at least for the time being. Don't storm anymore. But we'll work through it. But one of the advantages here that the Heat have is this is not a player they're unfamiliar with. He has the longest tenure on the roster other than, well, there's the longest tenure on the roster, right? Because him and Bam, basically. So with that being the case, there's trust there. And so, you can work with a player like this. They had the issue with Caleb Martin where there wasn't trust with the agent. The agent made a horrific decision, and he told him, don't come back to us in 24 hours. They needed him to do it a certain way. The agent didn't want to do it that way. He came back in 24 hours, and the Heat, we don't have that money anymore. It's just not the way it works. But there will be communication between the Heat and Duncan on this, I'm sure, in terms of working this thing out. Your view, and then I'll punt it to Alex on this right after it. Because we want to talk about Davion Mitchell and how this affects that. And also Alec Burks. They have guaranteed Keyshawn Johnson. So he's on the – Alex and I were talking about this prior to the show. They don't have a lot to work with, really, prior to making a trade. And again, Wiggins being traded could assist in this. And you mentioned Rozier. But if you were them, what would you do with Duncan?
I would probably restructure that contract. I know that the Duncan Robinson experience has been – up and down, but I think the conversation would be drastically different if instead of making $15 to $20 million a year, he's making like half of that. That might, maybe there's an argument that's still a little too much for him, but just with the guarantee portion of it, it's like, would you rather have him on the books not making anything, or would you rather have him playing for maybe a little more than you want him to, but at least it's not 20 million. So if I had to guess, I think that's what they try to do. And if they do that, right now they're about $5.5 million below the luxury tax with 14 players under contract. They already have like a roster pretty much set. I think they'll probably do some changes, whether it's with Wiggins or Rozier. But if they just do that, let's say they restructure it, they have them decline and re-sign for a starting salary of $10 million. Now you just saved 10 million. So now you're like 15.5 million below the tax. And that's probably, now that they're not getting Durant, doesn't seem like they're, they were linked to Giannis this morning. I think the Heat are a bit of a long shot for that compared to some of the other teams. But assuming that they're mostly, as far as like their top players go, like it's still Bam and Herro, and they don't really get anyone better than those guys, they're probably going to stay under the tax. In that case, now you have more flexibility, not only to keep Davion Mitchell in case he picks up that qualifying offer they extended below the tax, but maybe even negotiate the contract a little differently. Maybe instead of starting him at like $8 million, maybe they want to go a little higher. So they have a little more flexibility now as far as how they can negotiate with Davion Mitchell if they restructure Duncan Robinson's contract, like I suggested.
Alex, go ahead.
All right, so bear with me here. I'm not sure if I'm lagging right now. So
You're
Ethan,
good.
give me some sort of bat signal if I am. I missed like half of what you were saying there, and I did my best to hold on because of my lag. But so you brought up a great point with the restructuring, and I heard you guys talk about this with Heat Beats Brian Goins, and that was a great mock offseason episode you guys did. I recommend anybody to go out there and watch it. It was obviously before the Durant stuff happened, but it gives you a good rundown of where the Heat are at. Anyways, it's still relevant info, and that was when you guys brought up the Duncan restructuring. It caught my attention because, like you mentioned, it's kind of a little bit of the best of both worlds, where you can still have Duncan if you want to keep him because his team is still one that needs shooting, and he's been one of the ways, kind of their levers for offense for years now. So if they want to keep him at a more reasonable deal while still finding a way to get under the tax line, I think that's probably like the best compromise. Now, I think the other option that I'm not expecting by any means is they'd rather just have him opt out if they want to use that mid-level exception. Because I think if they restructure something to what you're talking about there, it would leave them enough to re-sign Davion if he accepts the qualifying offer, but then not enough to, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, use the mid-level exception, because I think it would put them over the tax if Davion re-signs. Do I have that right?
Yeah, they wouldn't be able to use the full amount, but either way, if that scenario happens where they keep Duncan on a different number and they re-sign Davion, they're going to have a full 15-man roster. So no matter what, they're going to have to do some trade, something to change the roster up a little bit if they're even going to be able to roster a guy with the mid-level. So that's where maybe a Terry Rozier trade comes in, an Andrew Wiggins trade comes in.
Unless Duncan opts out by Sunday.
Yeah, but he's not going to opt out unless he's restructuring that contract. Like he's not going to get a
promise from somebody else.
I don't think he's getting $10 million on the open market.
I guess the next point is, he's worth more to the Heat than he might be worth to some other teams simply because they don't have any shooting. I think that's a part of it. Although I could see Duncan contributing on a contending type team as an additional shooter, but the Heat don't have any shooting. And that's why I just want to bring up one thing before I forget it. Alec Burks has indicated he wants to return, and I can't see the Heat paying more than a minimum for him. But as you look at the roster, do you even see a spot for him, or either financially or in terms of roster spot?
Right now, no. They have a lot of guards. The backcourt is pretty loaded. Like they just drafted Kasparis. So, and if they bring back, especially if they do bring back Duncan, there's not really much of a fit there yet. So that's why I would think that the Heat, regardless of whatever happens with Duncan, and I even mentioned Davion, whatever happens with him, I think they're going to be looking at some sort of trade just to reduce some spots. If maybe they could turn 2 or 3 players into just one.
Right.
I think the roster will, if I had to guess, I think the roster will be a little different. Like, I think they maybe 2 to 3 players don't return just so they can figure out this roster crunch that they're dealing with.
All right. I'm going to pitch it back to Alex here after the break, but I got one more thing just to take us into the break, and that'll give us some time to think about it. So you mentioned, they may have to move Rozier and Wiggins. There's a little different situations there because Wiggins has 2 years left on his deal, but he's a better player at this point. Rozier has 1 year left on his deal at 24 because he's not earning the incentives. It was a 24, right? Because the $1.7 million, he didn't earn those. He had to make the second round, which didn't happen, or play 70 games, which didn't happen, right? So
it's just he has a $26.6 million salary, but only 25 is guaranteed. So there's not really any reason to cut him.
Right. And just to be clear for Heat fans on Rozier, even if they're not planning on playing him this year, they're not going to buy him out. They're not going to, the stretching is not, none of this stuff. It's either, really there are 2 options with Terry, right? You're either trading him and you may have to attach something, which is something I want to ask about as we go into the break, which is something they've had to do before, and it kind of makes fans a little queasy because they had to give up a first rounder to get him, and now you may have to attach something to move him off if you're going to do that. And they did that with Lowry, and I don't know that they want to repeat that, or we want to see them repeat that. So that's the first part. So but really the options are either you trade him or you're keeping him, right? Like there's no third rail here, correct? You got to find somebody to take that expiring salary if that's the direction you want to go.
Unless he gives back a ridiculous amount of money in the buyout. Yeah, it's one of those two options.
Okay. All right. So on the other side, I'm going to let Alex start, but I just wanted to get to that because people have asked about that. Isn't there something else they can do with Terry? No, there's two options, but I do want to talk about Wiggins on the other side of this also. And also Kuminga, which we have to get to before we let you go, because obviously that plays into it. I don't think a lot of people understand how the trade works, and you can only take half back and all that kind of stuff. So that's where we'll go with this. Before we do, what does work, we know this works, is Cash App. Everybody at the 5 Reasons, well, not everybody at 5 Reasons Sports, but everybody at 5 on the floor. I can't speak for everybody else, but I know we're smart enough to all have it. Download Cash App today. Use our code on the floor. You don't have a lot more time to do this, okay? And we're basically sending you free money. But they're sending you free money, but it's through us, so thank us. Use the code on the floor at Cash App. Put it in your profile after you've downloaded. Send $5 to a friend within 14 days. You get $10 dropped right into your account. This is a safe way to send money. If you're sending it to somebody that feels sketchy, they will alert you. You can also spice up your payments with custom text, stamps, and background. So check it out. It's on the floor for limited time only, and we're getting real limited here. Use the referral code on the floor. Send $5 to a friend within 14 days. You get $10 dropped right into your account. Terms apply. That's money, and that's Cash App. Okay, Alex, take it from here.
All right, so this is the I think going to be the meat and potatoes for a lot of fans right now, because the big story outside of course, Kasparis is everything going on with Jonathan Kuminga. I mean, like we were over there waiting at the Heat draft party for the pick. It said the pick is in. And then all of a sudden, Shams comes on and is talking about Kuminga and confirming the Heat's interest. So it seems like the smoke is forming into a little bit of fire there. So I have been very unsure about what a sign and trade would look like. Like for as much as I try to do my best to keep up with the CBA and how everything would work, and I do my best here for the fans. I really wanted to have you back on.
All right, we cut out there for just a second because Alex is having some issues with the storm up there, which we totally understand. But Yossi, you got the gist of the question here, which is referencing Kuminga. And again, he's a restricted free agent. For those who don't understand, he can be signed and traded. But what are the rules related to that? What does it mean? Because there's some out there, including somebody who's real tight with Jimmy Butler, has put it out there that Wiggins can't be traded back to Golden State, but that is not in fact true, right? So just go through what can happen with Kuminga, Wiggins, and all of that.
So more of the complications is on the Warriors side. So to the first part, the Wiggins part, yeah, he can go back to the Warriors already. There's like kind of some confusion about how the rule works. Usually when you trade a player, you have to wait a year, but it's like whatever sooner between the start of the new salary cap year versus like actually, or waiting a whole year. So in this case, since it was the trade deadline, once the new league year roll is over, the Warriors can trade back for Wiggins. So that's not a problem. I don't expect the Warriors to want to do that. I would guess maybe that's like more of a 3-way type trade. Maybe Wiggins goes to a third team. But as far as the complications, it's mostly on the Warriors side because this thing called base year compensation, which limits a player's outgoing amount in the trade. So to either 50% of what the new salary is the first year, or the whatever the salary was last year. So as an example, let's say the Heat want to bring in Kuminga at a contract that averages like maybe 25 to 27 million a year. And to help the Warriors out, they started out at like 30 million. And then it descends. So then like maybe the last year ends in like the low 20s. For the Warriors, then on their end, it counts as $15 million going out. So that makes it so they can bring back like a more expensive player, and maybe they can include some other players that they're signing trading, like Kevon Looney, Gary Payton, just to like juice up how much they're sending out.
Right.
It'll help them keep a deeper roster. As far as the Heat's concerned, they just got to be able to match for whatever Kuminga's salary is. Whatever he's actually making, that's how much.
So it does,
the
so
Heat
just to be clear, the base year compensation, as you described, which means you can only take in half of what goes out, it does not affect the Heat in terms of what they can say. It just affects the Warriors side of it.
Right.
But that also complicates the deal because the Warriors have to get it right on their side, or else you've got to have other teams that are involved in this process. So if that's the case, then tell me what a deal for Kuminga would even look like. And I'm talking both parts because it's financial, but also in terms of players that are sent out. Because as we mentioned, the Heat don't have a lot of roster spots. They don't have a lot of wiggle room under these various thresholds financially. And so it would seem to make it challenging here, especially if the Warriors don't want Wiggins. You got to find a third team. Doesn't seem to be a ton of interest in Wiggins out there. Phoenix wanted nothing to do with Wiggins, which is one of the reasons that deal blew up. We've heard some rumors about the Lakers, but nothing that's finalized at this point. So I guess as you look at it, like, what would a deal even? How would you conceptualize a deal for Kuminga? And isn't this a guy who turned down $30 million already per year? So we're talking about 25 to 27. I don't think he's worth more than that at this stage. I don't think he's proven it, but what would that even look like?
So you want to get a third team involved, basically. Now, especially because with the Warriors, let's just say it was a 2-team trade to show why it wouldn't work. Let's say the Warriors did want Wiggins back. He's making 28. That means if they can get Kuminga, let's say they start Kuminga at 30. So that means they're only sending out 15 mil, which means they need to send out like another 13 mil because they're going to want to do a 1-to-1 match because of their apron situation. I'm not going to get too into that, but they're going to want to do a 1-to-1 match. The Heat can't trade Wiggins and bring in $43 million. They can't do that. The trade wouldn't work, and they wouldn't want to do that anyways. So let's say a team like, I don't know, let's say the Bulls wanted Andrew Wiggins. I don't know. So you send Kuminga to the Heat. You send Andrew Wiggins to the Bulls, and then the Bulls send they don't now because I use the Bulls as an example because they're well below the aprons, they're well below the tax, so they can send out like the minimum required. So I think it's like 19 million. So they only send out 19 million. They increase by like 8.5 million, and that's basically how the balance works. You get another team who can take on more money. That's pretty much what it is. And then I don't know. They send the Warriors. Maybe, I don't know, let's say they want Kobe White and Lonzo Ball, and then they send the Bulls some picks to make that, worth their while. So that's just an example of how it would work. As long as you get at least one more team involved, that kind of helps all the teams get around the BYC issue.
Okay, and I'm looking at the Bulls cap table as we just kind of close the deal. And I know you're just mentioning them as an example. It's not a report or anything. But I'm looking at players like Kobe White makes 13, Lonzo Ball makes 10. So, I mean, right, Kevin Herter makes 18, right? So you have players in this space that if a team like Golden State, it could be a fourth team too, right? You could involve a fourth team if somebody really wanted something. But there are options here to get something done. But this idea of just, say, sending Wiggins back to Golden State is probably not the way that this is going to go. What's your thought on this? And I know, again, you're handling it more from the money side of it than maybe the transactional side of it in terms of what teams might, want or not want. But what do you think Jonathan Kuminga would come? I mean, restricted free agency is different, right? Because, Tan, we're going to see this with Davion also. But what are we even be talking about for this kind of player at this stage? Who obviously has a lot of upside, top 5 in the draft, has averaged 15, 16 points a bit past 2 seasons, but also doesn't seem to really fit with Jimmy, and he just seems to get in Kerr's doghouse a lot.
So I look at Jonathan Kuminga as like he's a talented player, but there's a lot of talented players that have cycled through the Warriors that for whatever reason, Kerr's got a really complicated system. There's a lot of players like, for example, Kelly Oubre in the past, Dennis Schroeder just recently, they came in, did not work out, but they've worked out just about anywhere else. And I think Kuminga's kind of in that realm. Maybe there is a little bit of mentality and stuff like that that's not helping him. But I think he's probably still worth something in the mid to high 20s. it seems like there's still enough interest league wide based on some of the teams reportedly interested in him, like the Heat, the Bulls. I just saw before we started this, the Kings might be interested, which kind of would check out. They always like former Warriors. So all these teams, they have the flexibility to bring in a player, a free agent in a sign and trade. So I would guess that there's enough interest where he should still get around whatever the Warriors were probably offering him last year and during negotiations. And it's just about if the Warriors can bring back the types of players under contract that makes it worthwhile for them. So I kind of like the Bulls. I feel like they have a lot of guys. Like Vucevic was linked to them.
Right.
I think Lonzo would be a great fit with the Warriors. They could really use a guy like him after losing Melton last year. I think Kobe White would be a great fit with the Warriors. I feel like if I had to predict, I feel like the Bulls might be the teams that come out on top with Kuminga. But either way, I think Kuminga's probably still going to get maybe not exactly what he was hoping for, but something still that might get a lot of people have some sticker shock when they see the numbers based on what he did last year.
All right, two quick final ones, and we'll let Yossi go. And Alex is here now, but with the internet stuff, I'm gonna lead him, and we're communicating here on text. Two things. One, Davion Mitchell, and then I want to get to your view of the Heat's cap and tax situation relative to other teams. Okay, real quick. Davion, first thing. Qualifying offer has been extended. Do you think, and we just saw the Nets. The Nets were a team that we talked about with Davion because his agent represents some players who've been up there and they had space and all that, but they just drafted a bunch of guys, and they drafted the whole draft basically. And I don't know that they would accept. Do you think Davion Mitchell is going to get an 8-figure per year offer on the market now? He's also restricted.
I don't think so. I could be wrong, but it took Davion a while to get going. Literally until getting to the Heat, where he found a place that know how to utilize him correctly and give him confidence and start having like a semblance of an offensive game. So I think for him, it's probably best to stay with the Heat. I would imagine just the fact that they gave him this qualifying offer that that they're comfortable giving him a contract in that range. So, and then also you got to factor in restricted free agency. It's kind of a nuisance of a process. A lot of teams just don't even feel motivated to get involved and make a big offer because why even waste the time? It's probably just going to get matched. So I think the Heat have I guess they have like the ball's kind of in their court. I think they'll be able to hold their line and give them something fair. And I would expect that he returns on something that's reasonable.
Okay, final one. We appreciate your work, always doing. You coming on with us, Yossi Gozlan, doing the home and home here. I was on with him. He's on with us, and we really value what you do. I'll finish with this, and it's what I mentioned earlier. The Heat have not had enough to get things done recently in terms of assets, draft picks, getting their draft picks in order, all that kind of stuff. I'm of the belief, to a certain degree that getting those draft picks in order and going young this year is the way to go. Don't try to remove the progress stoppers, maybe like Wiggins, like Rozier, if you can, as long as you don't have to attach assets to do it. If I was to say to you, the Heat, in terms of their assets, their cap situation, their tax apron situation and willingness to spend over it, which they were willing to pay tax, but it may make sense to just get under it for the repeater if you're not going to contend this year. Where would you rank them? Are they in the bottom third right now of the league, or would you give them a little bit more credit than that?
I'd give them a lot more credit. I think their cap management's been pretty good. Even like leading, like when they brought Jimmy Butler in, all the years that they were paying him. I think right now they're in a very good spot where they have the flexibility to do stuff this year. It's mostly their lack of draft picks that's going to make things a little harder. But I think they're in a good spot this year and next year, where next year they could have cap space, but that's more so like, that depends on players not signing extensions this summer, which players are probably going to extend. That's
Right.
just the trend now. So it's
Mhm.
like, who are you hoping makes it to free agency? Is it Jaren Jackson? Is it Mikal Bridges? Austin Reeves and Kobe White should probably make it there. It's not a big pool of players. So the Heat, more realistically, they're probably hoping to get something done with a trade. Now, I don't think it's perfect. I don't like that they gave Bam that max contract, the one they just extended him to last year, just 3 years max.
Oh man, YouTube is
Like,
gonna love you.
well, here's the thing, because like you give that type of there's not much reason to extend a player with multiple years left on his contract unless you think you're getting ahead of something. In which case, the only thing that he were really getting ahead of was what if he wins Defensive Player of the Year and qualifies for the Supermax, which is a higher max. Well, I mean, Wemby was going to win it if he didn't get hurt. I don't think Bam was even he didn't make all defense this year anyways, did he?
No, and it's a big criticism for fans that they don't promote him enough for it on social media also. So they could have controlled that to a certain degree. All right, so I get it, and YouTube's going to, but then I can't
and then one more thing. If they they're saying there's a lot of reporting that they're going to give Herro also with 2 years left on his contract.
That was my next question. Okay, so that's where I was going with this, and now you've unleashed the atom bomb here with in the final minute of the episode. What would you do? He says he's not going to pressure them this year. He's okay waiting it's clear he's going to want every dollar. What we just saw a bunch of guards like Bane, Anthony Simons, like his type of guard is being traded all over the league because teams don't think they can pay that guy as a third guy $50 million. A little bit of a different deal in Orlando because you had a couple guys, not fully paid to this point. What would you do?
I would play things out. Unless he's willing to take something like significantly less than whatever that maximum amount is, that's like $50 million a year. I don't see the rush. Like even less than Bam. Like I kind of saw at least a Defensive Player of the Year thing, the Supermax thing. I get that. Like, what are you getting ahead of with Herro? Are you afraid that he's going to be so good in 2 years that he's going to command the max contract? I don't see it with him. He's been a lot better. He was an all-star this year. I just think with his defensive limitations, I struggle to see another team in the league making him a max offer in 2 years. Like Trae Young, for all we know, he's being penciled in as accepting an extension this summer that's going to be less than the max, maybe paying him like 40 to 50 million a year. If Trae Young's going to get that, then what does Herro get, relatively? Like, are they going to, if they give him that extension, there's a possibility Herro will be more paid than Trae Young. So I would play things out. I don't see the rush in giving him that.
There's also not the fear of him pulling a Jimmy on you and quitting, which, is to his credit as a human being and a teammate, but also puts less pressure on them to actually have to get something done. They can wait it out. They were planning on waiting it out with Jimmy. He just made it untenable so that they couldn't at that stage. All right, Yossi, we appreciate you. Alex, I promise you, and I know the restart of the computer helped. I got to your question. So you'll be able to listen to the episode on the other side and you'll hear all the great answers here. Yeah, it's great. You'll listen to the episode with everybody else. Yossi Gozlan, we appreciate your work. Third Apron, check it out. Newsletter. Also, of course, the Twitter feed, the YouTube, all that stuff. You can find all of his stuff there. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.